Yeah, cool. Good to see you too. This is an interesting conversation we're having tonight. So, if anybody had been kind of following what we've done recently, Martin and I started off a series where we kind of did like a what if fantasy pick'em kind of album where we talked about what if Kiss Alive 3 had come out after the next three studio albums, like maybe if it was supposed to, like the first two Kiss Alives coming out after three studio albums each. So Martin and I picked a bunch of tracks from the Dynasty, Unmasked, and the Elder era with some killer tracks in there and some Alive 2 tracks in there, the studio stuff. We created like a what if track listing for Kiss Alive 3 if it came out like 1982 or whatever. So we're continuing that series tonight with Bret and Joe with a Kiss Alive 4 what if. Now we know Kiss Alive 4 actually came out. I think initially it was supposed to come out during what, 99 or 2000, but around the farewell tour.
It was the Millennium Show. The Millennium Show was the original Alive 4.
Right, but it ended up coming out in like 2003, 2004 as the Kiss Symphony show that they did in Australia with Peter Criss, interestingly enough, and Tommy Thayer. And they even did a DVD package with that and a documentary and stuff like that. So that was the real Kiss Alive 4. We're talking about what if Kiss Alive 4 came out after the next three studio albums, which is we're including Killers, but we're mainly picking from Creatures of the Night, Lick It Up, and Animalize, which is a super interesting era of Kiss. We're basically going to say, you know, like Mark St. John was only in the band for what, like a show and a half when Animalize came out. So we're make-believing that this is actually going to be Bruce on guitar, because this is after they tour for Animalize, and they had Animalize live with Bruce, and Bruce basically became the member of Kiss after that tour. So this is what if they put it out after that tour, before Asylum. So we got Bruce Kulick on guitar, Eric Carr on drums, Paul and Gene on rhythm and vocals and bass. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around. We each have a side, and then we have a fourth side. So I kind of thought about maybe doing another studio side, but there's so much good material from this era that I think doing four sides of live stuff is good enough.
Yeah.
And then we also had our patrons pick and vote what our single would be if they released a single from this album. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to throw it over to Joe. Joe, let us know your side one, Brett's side two, I'm side three, and then we kind of put our tracks together for side four. So Joe, tell us what your side one, 5 tracks are, and tell us why you picked them.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, although there's a couple songs I included that were not on their standard set list. But I did see them, I saw them on the Creatures tour, I saw them on Lick It Up, and I saw them in Animalize. And, great shows. Of course, they took out the makeup during that period. The one thing that I always irked me about history is they never released a live album with Eric Carr in it. Now they had the video, but I would have liked to have heard a live album. So this is a great idea. So my leadoff song is Creatures of the Night. It's just a great leadoff song, and it's a great song. I picked all the big staples from Creatures of the Night, and my favorite songs from Lick It Up. Next song is Under the Gun, which is a great rocking tune off of Animalize. And then a song that they really didn't play live on the Lick It Up tour, but it got airplay on MTV, and I think it's one of their best songs, and it's possibly Vinnie Vincent's best lead because he plays with a lot of style and groove instead of just Bumblebee, and that's All Hell's Breaking Loose, and I just love it. The history of that is that Eric Carr wrote it as kind of a Kashmir type song, and then Paul took it and made it to what it was. But I love that song, and I don't know why they didn't play it more. And I like the rap and everything. I Love It Loud. I know it gets played to death, but it's a fantastic anthem. You hear the drum beat at sporting events, and it's got to be included. And then Lick It Up. I know that's another song that gets overplayed, but that was their hit single. That's what rejuvenized, made the band successful again. It became a gold record. That and taking the makeup off, of course, but I have to include Lick It Up for sure. It's their hit single. So that's my side one.
Nice, side one. I would agree with Creatures of the Night opening the track listing, just because I think the real Kiss Alive 3 actually opened with Creatures of the Night. And if you don't have Deuce and you don't have Detroit Rock City, like it's definitely what they're going to use to open. So That's definitely a good pick there. And All Hell's Breaking Loose. probably one of my favorite Kiss music videos, just because of how kind of cheesy and fun it is to watch. But any thoughts, Bret?
Under the Gun is an interesting choice. That's off of Animalize, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the. I wasn't a part of the Animalized video, but I remember giving it a very low rating when Marco asked me. And I do know Under the Gun's one of the few songs I do like off that record. But I think everything else speaks for itself.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The only thing is, like I said, I wish they would have included All Hell's Breaking Loose when I actually saw them on the Look It Up tour.
I remember when I saw Kiss on the Rock the Nation tour in 2003, me and my dad were at events, we're like, oh, they're going to do All Hell's Breaking Loose, Rock the Nation. That's like a line from that song. And they never did it.
Didn't even think of that. That would have been perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Bret, what's your side two? Let us know what your 5 tracks are.
So in order, just, I'll go through is Danger, Nowhere to Run, Exciter, Heaven's on Fire, and War Machine. It was tough for me to actually choose because I love pretty much every song off of Creatures of the Night, but I wanted to go with like a song that you just wouldn't think of, and a song that I feel like would do that would go really well over with the crowd, because I don't think I didn't get a chance to like look and see like what they did during that time, but I don't think they ever played Danger live.
No.
But it's one of my favorite Paul songs off that record. And then, in my opinion, Nowhere to Run is probably the best of the studio tracks that came off of Killers. Exciter is an amazing opening track. It's like if Creatures of the Night wasn't a thing, like Exciter would be the opening. For me, it would be the opening track on it. But like you said, you don't have Deuce. You don't have, Love Go to Jerk City. You have to go with Creatures of the Night. I chose Heaven's on Fire. I feel like that was kind of self-explanatory. Like that was the single off the record. And War Machine. It's funny. I had chose War Machine for Fire Breathe, and then I had another song for Blood, but then I realized, oh wait, no, this is non-makeup. Gene didn't do the Blood during the non-makeup era. And so, War Machine is the perfect one because I know during that time, like I think if you watch, like the Animalized concert, he does the fire during War Machine. And then I know when I saw them in 2003, that was the song that he did the fire for at the end.
Yeah, he did the fire. Yeah, I know on Look It Up he did the fire for Firehouse still, but I think he switched to War Machine on Animalize.
Yeah, and I know I've seen him do War Machine a couple other times, but I couldn't remember if he did the fire all the time through that. But I do know, like on the Rock the Nation tour was when he was the first time I had ever seen him do fire for War Machine.
Yeah, War Machine's a staple in their set list now on the End of the Road.
But yeah, that's a great tune that I'm glad they brought back, because they didn't do that for any of the reunion stuff, right?
No.
I think the only. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think the only stuff they did on the reunion when they did the farewell tour, I think they did I Love It Loud and Lick It Up.
They played Heaven's on
Fire. Yeah.
And Heaven's on Fire with Ace and Peter, which was interesting that we get those versions with Ace and Peter.
Yeah.
But yeah, good set list for side 2. Any thoughts, Joe?
Heaven's on Fire never gets old for me. I just think it's a fantastic song. It's simple. It's fun to play on guitar. It's, you hear it a lot, but I absolutely love it. Like,
yeah,
you got to include it. And War Machine's just awesome too. Yeah. I have no complaints with this list.
Heaven's on Fire is a song that I enjoy more live than I do as a studio track. Like the Live 3 version is really good. And even even the version that I believe is off the soundboard recording from 2001 is really good. I feel like when they do it live, it's a bit more punchier.
Yeah.
Awesome. And maybe in this version, Paul Stanley can jump through a hula hoop on fire.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Both him and Gene get their fire moments. The end of the song.
Gene lights the hula hoop and Paul jumps through it.
Oh my God. Yeah. So you know what? Let me take the fire breather out of War Machine and Heaven's on Fire, and just him blowing fire into the ring and Paul jumping through it.
Awesome. All right. Good side. I'm going to go with my side 3. So this was one, Bret and Joe both picked 1,000,000 to 1 from Lick It Up, but I had to take something from them because they both picked a bunch of great tunes. So I had to throw myself a bone here. So I stole that one. But that was one I think I've discovered more in recent years, and I think that's because I think Eddie Trunk was championed that song for a while. I think he was the one who convinced Paul to play it on the Live to Win tour.
Yep.
So that was one that I think because of him, I went back and listened to and really just fell in love with that tune. I think it was written by Vinnie Vincent. And that's just one of the most underrated gems from the unmasked 80s era of Kiss. Absolutely. So for me, some of the songs I picked are songs that like they either did legitimately live or would appear on this. And then there's also songs that are, it's a fantasy what if pick them. So I picked a song 1,000,000 to 1 I think would have been great live. My next track is also from Killers, which is Partners in Crime. And I know everybody, and I agree that say that Nowhere to Run is the best of those songs. And I agree with that. But Partners in Crime, I have this weird thing where just every once in a while I'll be walking down the street and all of a sudden I'll go in my head, Partners in Crime. It'll just slip in my head for some reason. It's one of those songs. And that one sounds like a Lick It Up tune. Like it sounds like it could have fit right onto Lick It Up. So maybe they would have played that live if they were picking stuff from Killers. Rock and Roll Hell, I think, is a great heavy tune from Creatures of the Night. And I think it would be a perfect headbanger that I would love to have seen played like in a stadium. I don't think they ever played it live until the Kiss Cruises. I think there is some footage of them doing Rock and Roll Hell on the Kiss Cruises, but I don't think they ever played it live previous to that. And that's just kind of like a fantasy. Like that would have been a great tune, along with stuff like War Machine. It's in that kind of vein for me that I think would have been great live. A great Gene tune to play live that people could bang their head. Then I go with I Still Love You, which they did do live at that time. It's on, I believe it's Animalize Live, where they do I Still Love You. They also did it, they did it for years live. And that, for a power ballad, that song has a lot of power in it. It's epic. The drums are heavy. It's actually a kind of a heavy song for a power ballad, and Paul nails the vocal. And they could have either done it like they did it live at the time, or they could have done something like they did with the acoustic set, maybe done it acoustically. That could have been cool for that time period too. And then I end with Thrills in the Night from Animalize. This was another song that they had done a video for, and it would have been something they probably would have put on a Kiss Alive 4 if this had come out at the time. And I think it's a good tune. It's one of the better songs from Animalize, in my opinion. So that's my side 3. Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't have 2 songs with Paul Stanley crying about Donna Dixon. So we gotta get rid of I Still Love You. 1,000,000 is good. They played. I mean, I've seen them play I Still Love You a few times, but yeah, that's my only gripe. 1,000,000 a much better song.
The backstory to 1,000,000 to 1 is like my favorite story to tell to people that don't really know a lot about Kiss, or they don't know anything about like what that song's about. And then when they find out it's about Paul being left for Dan Aykroyd, it's just the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah, that's still a little bizarre.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Thrills of the Night. There were a couple songs throughout the 80s that should have been massive hits, and they were proof that Kiss could still go, and they could kind of go toe to toe with any of these other like mega 80s hairband ballad acts. And songs like Thrills of the Night is definitely one of them. And then I think there was a song off of it was one of the songs off of Crazy Nights, but that's just Thrills in the Night. Thrills in the Night is the perfect example of this. That song should have been much bigger than it actually was, but unfortunately, by 84, Kiss was seen as a, what?
Didn't they make a video for it? But it's not widely viewed.
Yeah, no, it's like it's like a compilation of like live clips and stuff like that. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think it's a good tune, and I think the other thing too is Eric Carr had the tendency to make songs sound heavier than they were, and I think songs like I Still Love You and Thrills in the Night became heavier songs because of Eric Carr's playing. And I think those songs live, I think, would have been great. Same with like Rock and Roll Hell live would have been amazing. Imagine if they did Rock and Roll Hell during that little tour they did in Brazil. Rio de Janeiro. Imagine if it was one of the songs they played that was filmed at that time. That would have been incredible.
Yeah.
The audience would have gone nuts for that one.
For sure.
It's as close to heavy metal as I think they got in the 80s. Rock and Roll Hell, War Machine,
Danger. Like any of those songs off of that. Yeah, it's if the 80s didn't turn out the way that they were, I feel like they would have stayed on that trajectory. But whether or not it would have been successful for them is a totally different conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, well, I'm going to, one of Bret's picks on the next side is going to bring up one of the reasons I think they kind of went on a downslope in the 80s. So, Bret, it's your first song on side 4. And
really?
Yeah, so my point is, it's like, I think this is like one of the last good Gene songs until Unholy. And then Gene just checked out. So it was the Paul Stanley solo project.
Yeah.
Animalize until they recorded Revenge. So, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons. You buy a Kiss album and all the Paul Stanley songs would kick ass and the Gene songs would do terrible.
Yeah, I didn't really feel the need to put Burn Bitch Burn a part of it.
No, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I agreed.
So let's start off side 4. Why don't you give us the first couple of tracks, Bret?
So mine was Not for the Innocent, which is probably one of my favorite Gene tracks off of Lick It Up, and like Joe said, probably one of his better ones until even though like he kind of had some good tracks on Asylum, but overall Gene being Gene, he didn't really become himself again until Revenge. And then I had I've Had Enough, Into the Fire, and I thought it'd be a cool thing because of how the song starts. You can have Eric's drum solo precede it, and then it go into the song. And I think that is their best example of just trying to compete with what the other bands were putting out at the time. And I think they did it. I actually think they did it really well.
Awesome. For my next track, so I put Fits Like a Glove on here, which was a song from Lick It Up that they played live. They played that during Animalize Live, the home video. And that's the funny one where Paul tells the story about some lady bringing a kid to a show and saying it was Gene's kid, and then the kid opened its mouth and had a really long tongue. So I would assume that he was probably telling that story at most of the stops that tour. So that story would probably fit on here, and that would kind of replace the cold gin and the story, like, the talking to the audience part before that. So that would be a cool little Paul thing to introduce the song, and then to give Gene another song that they actually played live and would probably be on the album. Then I went with another kind of fantasy pick. Well, they actually played this one live too. So that I went with Give Me More from Lick It Up as well. So I think Lick It Up and Creatures were definitely, Animalize is where I agree with both of you, that the Paul tunes were all great for the most part. And then the Gene songs were kind of not as great as the Paul ones, but Give Me More is a Paul tune that they actually played live during the Lick It Up tour. So this is one that they conceivably could have done again for a Kiss Alive 4. So it makes sense to have a high energy song near the end of the set to kind of remind people you're at a Kiss show. And I think it went over well live. They played it really well live on Lick It Up, and I think it would have went well here live as well. And then Joe, you got the last tune.
Yeah, so just a story, so I saw him on Creatures, and I saw him on Lick It Up and Animal. I've seen him, subsequently every tour since. But on that Lick It Up tour, it was interesting because during their encore, they're like going, what song do you want to hear? What song do you want to hear? And then they made fun of I Was Made for Loving You, which they play now again. They played a little bit of it, like, no, we're not going to play that shit. And then they played a little bit of Down on Your Knees, and then they went in to Lick It Up. It was Dubuque, Iowa. It's in Kiss Alive Forever. It's mentioned that a little bit now in there too. My pick is Young and Wasted, but sung by Eric Carr. It was so badass on the Animalize tour.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it'd be cool if they did I Had Enough, he'd do a drum solo, then go in the Young and Wasted. Because that's how it is on the Animalize tour. He has the drum solo, and he goes into, I think so, then he sings it. Or maybe it's the other way around. But when they put him on vocals, I thought that was amazing. And I watch that all the time, especially around Thanksgiving on the date where he passed away. In memory of him, I always search that video and watch him sing Young and Wasted because it's so cool. so cool. But another thing, the tempo or the songs became so fast, especially during Animalize.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think on Creatures. I was just so blown away when I saw them because they're still had to make up the explosions and everything. There was hardly anybody in the crowd, but they still put on a show like it was big time. And I'm just trying to think if it was sped up there and Lick It Up, but Animalize definitely was like, wow, it's like double time speed. But
yeah, me and a friend of mine were talking about the Animalized show the other night and just how fast they play some of those songs and just how balls to the wall Eric is on drums with some of those. Like you listen to them, they think they open up with Creatures of the Night. No, they don't. I'm sorry, but they play
Rock City, then Creatures of the Night.
Yeah, and just they're playing it like 3 to 4 times faster than the tempo, and it's just I think a lot of that maybe also has to do with the fact that around that time Eric was very open about the fact that he was being heavily influenced by like thrash drumming and stuff like that. Like I remember reading a story that he had heard Metallica, and he's like, I want to do that. I want to sound like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's a ticket stub, if you can see it. This is an authentic ticket stub from 1984.
Nice.
Maple Leaf Gardens.
So I wasn't alive, but my aunt was here, and she gave me this ticket stub.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I've got a few ticket stubs.
I want to see if I got my Creatures one somewhere in my photos. But
while Joe's looking for that, let me reread the set list. So side 1, Joe, we got Creatures of the Night, Under the Gun, All Hell's Breaking Loose, I Love It Loud, Lick It Up. Side 2, Bret, Danger, Nowhere to Run, Exciter, Heaven's on Fire, War Machine with Fire Breathing. Side 3, which is me, A Million to One, Partners in Crime, Rock and Roll Hell, I Still Love You, Thrills in the Night. And then side 4, which is all 3 of us, we got Not for the Innocent, I've Had Enough, Into the Fire with the drum solo, Fits Like a Glove, Give Me More, and Young and Wasted, sung by Eric Carr to close out the show.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to switch around. I think Lick It Up, and then we'd have to switch up the set list. And But no, I think the song selection is spot on. Definitely.
Yeah.
Hit all the strong points.
Like it was easy for me to choose songs, but then like trying to, at least from like the 10 songs, because I picked 10 songs altogether, it was hard for me. I didn't even manage to do it, but just like figuring out like, okay, well, how would this flow like well? But from how you put it together, like I said, maybe a couple things I would switch around, but for the most part, it's a real solid set list.
Yeah. The thing, honestly, the first song that popped in my head was Young and Wasted, sung by Eric Carr. That's how much I love that video.
Yeah.
But then the other songs are just no-brainers. I mean, the best songs on Creatures are the ones they play. But the ones that were added to it, like Rock and Roll Hell, that's just great stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, Lick It Up, like I said, All Hell Breaking Loose and A Million to One. It's too bad those weren't staples in the set list.
Yeah, and I think if this was recorded live, if we're going to talk about like where do you think it was recorded live for the fake Kiss Alive 3, I thought it made sense if they would have done it internationally, like in Australia or Europe or somewhere like this, where those unmasked songs and Dynasty songs were big hits. Makes sense. Here, I feel like probably where they filmed Animalize live back at Cobo Hall, coming back to their roots, being heavier, being faster. Songs, like they got a good reaction there during that video. Like Fits Like a Glove got a good reaction on that video, maybe because of Paul's intro and stuff like this. So I think these songs probably would have went over well there, unless you two have any other thoughts about where they might have played this live.
No, it's interesting you bring that up because Animalize, I had to drive up to Milwaukee because they couldn't sell it. They had to cancel the show in Chicago. They said it was because but I knew guys who worked for the Ticket Sellers Union. They couldn't sell any tickets, not even at UIC Pavilion.
Yeah.
So I had to drive up to Milwaukee. I think it was December 30th to see him on the Animalize tour, and they had a pretty decent crowd for that. At the it was called the Mecca at the time. Now it's called something else. But it's amazing how they would draw in some cities. In some cities, they were just absolutely dead.
Yeah.
Chicago was one of them. Dynasty killed them until the reunion. They couldn't sell anything.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, I don't know if I really
Detroit was always huge. They always drew in Detroit. Yeah.
I don't know if I would necessarily put it for here, but it's just interesting when you think about the fact that they never have put out an official live record from New York.
Yeah, I know. And
yeah. You know, obviously some of Alive one was apparently recorded. Like some of that is from stuff from, I believe, like Jersey or whatever, but it's just I always found that interesting how we just never got something from New York. I don't know if I would necessarily put this here because I don't think even around this time, I don't think they toured New York on this tour. I have that book where it's like the history of Kiss in Madison Square Garden, and I think the only
they played Radio City Music Hall and look it up, but I don't know if what they did for
the Garden. I don't think they played the Garden again until I think it was like there was a big space in the 80s, and I don't think they played the Garden again until Hot in the Shade tour, because I remember my dad seeing them at the Garden on the Hot in the Shade tour, and that turned out to be like Eric's last show with the band.
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, good picks.
Yeah.
Man, I was gonna say so. Oh, yeah. So we kind of talked about last thing I'll bring up.
I wanted to
go ahead, Joe.
Fun fact, you bring up Kiss Alive. The only time a city is mentioned on any of the live albums is during Let Me Go Rock and Roll. And it was recorded in Moline, Illinois. And Gene Simmons says, "Come on, Quad Cities." It's the only time they mention a metropolitan area. So there you go. Fun fact, not more history for you.
Thanks for the fun fact. Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up that we kind of brought up on the first What If episode I did with Martin was I'm surprised that they didn't try to put out a Kiss Alive in the 80s, because you'd think with them kind of struggling through certain eras of the 80s, you think that would have been a go-to, like, hey, let's put out a Kiss Alive because the Alive brand could be a potential hit record for us. Because sorry, go ahead.
The guy who runs the Kiss FAQ, he collects contracts and all. I think he just released like a couple months ago one of the contracts, the new Polygram one that they signed right after Dynasty, I guess. But they were supposed to do a live album, but they never did. And then he was wondering if that's what translated into them making thrashes and hits and everything. But everything, excuse me, everything was renegotiated after Ace left anyway. But I think in that contract, they were supposed to release a live album, but then when the Elder and all the other stuff, and then Ace leaves, it all got mixed up and became
was that the famous contract that like took them all the way to the year 2000, and they were supposed to release so many studio albums, so many live albums, so many compilations.
They had to have 3 original members, and Ace cost them a lot of money. So
yeah, it just makes sense to me, because I mean, Kiss Alive 1 kind of saved the band when they were struggling with the studio albums previous to that. And I know Lick It Up was platinum, and I think Animalize went platinum. But I mean, it just makes sense that, here they are kind of struggling again. Maybe a Kiss Alive, maybe not a Kiss Alive 3 after Elder, but maybe a Kiss Alive 3 after Animalize would have made sense at that time. But anyway, any final thoughts about anything?
Kiss always, you mentioned that, Kiss always did that one thing, and it seemed like it was always unintentional. That when they tried to like do something to be big, like Crazy Nights, it didn't work out. But like Alive hit, or Beth became by mistake a huge hit, or they took the makeup off, which was intentional, but that rejuvenated the band. Then they put the makeup back on. So they always had that one thing that kept them going, but they kept on going, and here they are, still one of the biggest bands in the world.
Yep.
Any final thoughts, Brett? Oh, you know what? I should mention we do have a single. So we got our Patrons to vote, and our single A-side was voted by our Patreon members as I Love It Loud. So that would be the live version of I Love It Loud from this album. And the B-side would be Creatures of the Night live. Okay. So those were, I'll just mention a couple comments from our patrons. Reed says, "I love this era of Kiss so much that I would have been happy with any of these tracks as a single, but I Love It Loud was the Kiss hard rock manifesto for the 80s. David says, "My invisible pick is I'm a Legend Tonight, but my visible pick is Creature's title track. I'm not huge on this period, though underrated." Don says, War Machine, not a fan of this era of Kiss, but that song is solidly mean and lean. And Nick Esquire says, I went with Creatures as the first single. It was not previously a single, and given the era, it would fit the airwaves of video waves in 85 or so. The energy level would have been high as it was usually an opener. See Alive 3. And that's our single pick. I Love It Loud A side and Creatures of the Night B side.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So other than that, thanks for joining us, Bret. I know we see you on the Contrarians and some other channels here and there. And Joe, I know you have your new channel that just came out, Average Joe's.
Right.
And I know you just did an awesome interview with John Corabi.
Yeah, that came out of the blue. That was interesting. I wanted to interview him about his stint as a trucker. And I emailed his management and he emailed me, and yeah, so now we're good buddies.
Very cool. So go support Joe, give him a like and follow over at Average Joe's, and support us. Give us a like and follow. We have a Patreon as well and some official merchandise. Links in the description. And thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
See you later, guys.